I want to switch gears to basketball because, Coach and I, we do love, our team's out, but still we're watching the playoffs. I'm going to start with just the easy question. Are you watching? Are you rooting for anybody? Or do you have a pick? Now, and here's the big thing.
Yes.
A lot of injuries, right? And because I know you used to cover basketball.
Yeah.
It's obviously for us as Laker fans, LeBron being hurt, AD being hurt, killed our chances. You're now seeing the Nets with two of their stars down. I blame it on the shortened season. Some people argue, or the shortened off season. Some people argue with me on that point. But what do you see happening in the playoffs?
I mean, I think that's part of it. I mean, I don't see how it's not. And having covered the NBA, and this is why I never judge an NBA player's injury. These dudes are tall, right? Steph Curry looks puny. He's 6'3", right? I'm 6'2", and he stands above me. And so when they sprain an ankle, that's a lot of leg and a lot of tendon that can go down, right? They pull a hammy. That's a lot of hammy. If you're 6'8", 6'9", that can be injured. So, I think the shortened off season. I think the way the game is now, where it is just transition basketball, jack up a three, long rebound, roll, right? It ain't no banging anymore. There's nobody settling in, right? You're not backing up on defense. You're turning and running and hoping to get in position to stop a fast break dunk, or you're rotating over to try to stop a deep three. So, I mean, the game is a little different. It's not as physical in terms of those bruises, but you can see the soft tissue injury. Basketball players just never get hamstring injuries. Hugh, when you and I were coming up playing football, that was what we did. You play basketball in the offseason to get in shape and to avoid hamstring injuries. Never happened. That's how you trained your hamstrings. Backpedal and jump. You don't see guys who get hamstring injuries left, right, and center now.
Yes.
But yes, I am watching the playoffs. My sons are huge fans. They're huge Atlanta Hawks fans, right? They spent most of their lives growing up in Atlanta. So I'm pulling for them. I grew up a Lakers fan. I'm going to be Lakers, until I die. The old teams, even going back, Silk Wilkes was my guy. I used to love those Byron Scott teams, all those guys, and Kareem. But I am pulling for the Atlanta Hawks. That city has had just sports, just disaster.
Hey, their future looks good. Trae Young looks like, I know the whole Luka Doncic thing will forever, shadow his career, but he looks like the real deal. Like,
he's
especially
a real
in these
deal.
playoffs, right?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I say about their team, and I joked about it on Twitter last night, is that the Sixers all look like Myles Garrett standing next to the Hawks. The Hawks got to do something about their strength and conditioning coach. Something they got to change their program a bit because they look small.
I heard there's a good place to get some chicken wings, but maybe we'll talk about that another time.
I know nothing about it.
Coach, now that our team's out, is there anyone you're kind of watching a little bit closer than anybody else?
Yeah, I want to see Brooklyn do well because I like the three players because they're offensive stars. Obviously, Harden's back playing tonight, and I knew he would be. Everybody said, "Oh, he won't play. He's playing." And
from out to doubtful to questionable to starting real quick.
I think I love to see them do it. I don't want to see the Clippers anyway, shape, or form. This even that they're still in it, but I love watching Trae Young play. He's a tremendous talent, and obviously he's an offensive star. But the guy had 18 assists last night. Broke the record. There's never been a young player that's had that many assists as young kids in a playoff game. So I'm glad to see Phoenix doing well.
I love watching them play.
Yeah, I love seeing Paul do well because it seems like every team he's been on, and they've had great records, and then he gets into the playoffs and gets hurt.
Yep.
That's why when he was the Lakers early I'm like, okay, here it goes again, and then all of a sudden he overcame that. And, they beat our Lakers, and they've made it to the conference finals. So Chris has done a great job. Devin Booker is a real deal, and Monty's deserving of this opportunity and what he's doing with the Phoenix Suns.
Well, look, real quick, we talked about how teams build a culture. 3 or 4 years ago, you had remember the old woman, like a granny, came at the owner talking about they want us to pay for an arena. They've been giving us this trash of a team and this and that. And she was just talk about the bad trades and free agent acquisition, and they changed that so quickly. It's easier to do in the NBA because you're talking 13 players as opposed to 53, just a much smaller environment. But you hire Monty Williams, he comes in and he takes Devin Booker, and they draft Andre Ayton, right? And they get some players that play well with each other and off of each other. And they have established a culture there where you can't tell me free agents they're going to be trying to get to Phoenix now.
Absolutely.
They're going to be trying to get to play with those guys because they're going to have something rolling for a while. Maybe not with Chris Paul because of his age, but they got an excellent nucleus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Coach we talked about Chris Paul and his injuries, that history in the playoffs specifically. But once they knocked out the Lakers, that became, hey, Steve's gonna think I'm some kind of transient because I also lived in Phoenix too for a while. I've lived in too many cities, but yeah, no, that's where I'm pulling for. I was not a big Chris Paul guy. He's proven me wrong every day, so I'm gonna stick with them. There's some coaching news too as we're going through these playoffs, and there's two specific I want to talk to you about because it leads into something else that I want to ask you. So Stotts in Portland, mutually they agreed to kind of part ways, but right away, the second that happened, there was the Pacers get rid of their coach, who there was some, whether the stories were true or not, about what was going on there, and it's and they have a history with Stotts, so it might be just a flip for him from Blazers right into the Pacers coaching. That doesn't really give other coaches an opportunity to really interview and see who's really the best coach for that job, because it's, hey, we have this relationship and we're bringing them over. Obviously, we don't know if there's any validity to that at this point, but what do you think, Steve? Is it the wrong way to do things where, hey, there's another job now waiting for me, so I'm going to mutually agree to kind of move on?
Well, I mean, look, the NBA is very insular that way because everybody's got guaranteed contracts. And, when you leave a team, you go offset and go to a salary with another team. So, look, coaches, they recycle coaches far more than the NFL. I mean, that's why at least, when I saw that Portland was considering Becky Hammond and Dawn Staley, I was like, okay, all right, at least, you're being open-minded. I don't think it's a stunt. But, when you still see, the Van Gundys of the world, and that's, getting opportunities when they've done it for a while, and they don't promote. I mean, I covered Pat Riley for a while down in Miami. And at the time, Eric Spoelstra was their advanced scout video guy. I would be on planes when I ended up working in Washington covering the NBA. I'd be on planes with Spo all the time because he's scouting them. He's scouting the team, if they're playing, things like that. And then Pat Riley had groomed him to be a head coach. And look where they are. I mean, you had some coaches who would do that. Say what you want about Jerry Krause, the fact that he took a chance on a CBA coach in Phil Jackson because he saw something
worked out pretty well.
Yeah. From the Albany Patroons, but he saw the type of team, the players that he had gotten there, and it worked out. And just too often in the NBA, you're like, okay, so what's Terry Stotts going to do to bring the Pacers better? Terry Stotts coaching in Milwaukee when I covered the. I don't think he's ever coached a team in the finals. I mean, so what are you trying to do? That's why I'd love to see Monty Williams get the promotion to Phoenix that he got. Yeah. He was always an assistant coach, and then he got this opportunity. We see how well, one dude who needs to be recycled and kept is Nate McMillan,
right
down in Atlanta. They changed night and day when they changed coaches. So, we'll see, but hopefully, people like Dawn Staley and Becky Hammond get some opportunities.
Yeah,
so
that was going to be the next name, right? Was Becky Hammond. Do you think she's head coaching next year? If you were a betting man, would you say she gets it? Because I think she deserves it. Of a lot of the ones that are out there, I think she's ready. But
she seems like the only assistant coach from Greg Popovich to never get a head coaching job.
Right.
All the others did. I mean, Mike Brown, Kerr, all these guys. Yep. So
it's a good one to learn under.
Budenholzer, yeah. So I'd love to see it. Do I think she will?
No.
But
Coach,
I would love to see it.
Coach, what are you thinking?
I think she will.
Yeah.
There's a movement that's going on in sports, football and basketball. I think you're going to see the first woman offensive coordinator here pretty soon in football. you know, or defensive coordinator, or special teams coordinator. It's going to happen. Just like I think you'll see the first woman's head coach. My struggle is because there's so many other coaches, you know, and I think, and I'm all for the ladies getting their opportunities. They should. I'm not against that, but there's so many men who are being passed over, you know. When I think of that, the dynamic of that side, when I think of Eric Bieniemy, when I think of Pep Hamilton, I think of the people who have paid the dues and they're ready. Not that the ladies haven't, but I just see a more movement that women are getting more opportunities right now than the men are getting right now. You know, and that's maybe more in football because I see it that way. But I hear what's happening in basketball, but I think that's going to start happening too, because I just think that's where our world is trending, you know.
So one of the things with the coaches, we talked about kind of getting opportunities. So since the NBA ABA merger, 237 head coaches, 124 of them were ex-players. Of that 124, 62 were black head coaches, so 50%. 113 didn't have playing experience. 14 of them, 12%, were black coaches. I know, again, I'm not saying anything earth-shattering, but the question is why and how can we change the fact that if you're not an NBA player, if you're a black NBA player, you're not getting a head coaching job?
Boy, that's a tough one because, again, I covered the NBA for 7.5 years, and I thought the number would have been significantly more of GMs and coaches who are former players, because it seemed like everybody was a former player. You know, I guess like the George Karls of the world. Did he ever play in the NBA? I'm not sure, but that it's an intriguing one because you do see a lot of black assistants on staff, and you know it's kind of the knock you hear about offensive and defensive linemen not getting head coaching jobs. You don't see a lot of big men, black or white, getting head coaching jobs. You know, Patrick Ewing, when he got the Georgetown job, people are like, okay, he's one of the big men who might be able to break through, even though he coached in the NBA forever as an assistant. It's a little bit more peculiar in the NBA, especially with the recycling of people like a Terry Stotts or, you know, you got guys like that who've never really, the same excuse that was held against Tony Dungy for just not getting your team over the hump does not seem to be used for certain people, right, particularly white head coaches who keep continuing to get recycled. And so, you know, it's to me, again, it's so insular because it seems like everybody has played. Even the general managers are, you know, seem to be former players. Mm-hmm. And I just don't, I don't understand why, because it's kind of like Eric Bieniemy. Do you remember when Brian Shaw was like the hot dude for like 5 years?
Right.
Yes. It didn't get a shot.
It didn't get a job.
No shot.
I mean, what was that? So you know, it's just a very, it is so insular. It really is, and it's cutthroat because, like I said, the guaranteed salaries even for GMs and all. When I covered, man, these dudes, if things started getting sideways with your team, the undercutting and the backbiting was the most savage stuff that I ever heard. And so I don't know if some of that stuff carries on when a GM goes to another team that has the opportunity to hire someone like, oh, no, that dude's a snake. He may be a good coach, but not here. So I don't know if that's one of the reasons why when it comes to the diversity issue. But I'm with you. I think more people when you start getting opportunities instead of the recycling going on.
Yeah, because, well, it's trending in the, look, NBA is trending in the wrong direction. It's funny you brought up Tony Dungy. In 2006, there was 2 black head coaches, right? Tony Dungy and Lovie Smith. And since that point, there's been less head coaches. Since there was, and it's a copycat league, but we didn't seem to copy that trend. Coach, I know how you feel, but
yeah, it's like you said. I've said it so many times. I don't think I can say it anymore. But bottom line is, I just think until everybody understands the history, and the history is talked about more, and understand why we are where we are, because I think you have to understand it all before you can really dive into it and get deep in it. I know more about the NFL than I do the NBA. You know, the 100-year history of the league, 19 minority head coaches. You have to go back. When was the first minority player? When was the first minority coach? And then that's got to tell you something. You know, why is it that way? Well, equal because we wasn't seen as equal. And I think the same thing's happening in the NBA. And there's outliers to everything. There's been outliers in the NFL, been outliers in the NBA. The guys have done a great job. I mean, look at Mike Tomlin right now. What he's done is phenomenal. But at the same time, why isn't there 3 guys, 4 guys who might know that's done it like that at that level? Marvin Lewis wasn't seen as great, but he was. For what he did in Cincinnati, look where Cincinnati is today. You know, so people just, it's the narratives that get spun, it's the things that get said, but at the same time, there needs to be more of a intentional piece of this out there so people can really hear it, and it's got to stay out there, and that's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
No, and listen, I know we've talked about it a lot, and I bring it up every couple of weeks because, one, I think it's one of those things that if you don't continually talk about it, it will get swept under the rug and no one will talk about it. And again, this is no knock to female coaches, but I feel like that's become the bigger story is, hey, let's get more female voices in sports, which we need. Let's get more female coaches, which we need. But let's not forget there's other, I think we can do multiple things, right? We don't have to just focus on one and say, hey, this is our baby this week. Let's focus on this. We can focus on all. There's a lot of problems. There's a lot of good. We should talk about them all.
Wow.